You won't believe what these saints went through for their faith. Some were tortured, some were mocked. Some gave up everything to follow God. But their stories continue to inspire millions of people around the world today. Here are 10 saints you should know before you die.
They called him a thief, a criminal condemned to die. His name was Dismas. He spent his life in sin, stealing and hurting others. To the world, he was nothing more than a lost man. But everything changed on the day he was crucified beside Jesus Christ. While others mocked Jesus, Dismas saw something different. He saw innocence, mercy, love, and in his final moments he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Then Jesus answered him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." In that moment, Dismas became the first saint personally promised paradise by Jesus himself. The thief became a saint. Today, Saint Dismas is known as the patron saint of prisoners, repentant sinners, and those near death. His story reminds us that no one is too far gone for God's mercy. Saint Dismas, pray for us.
This woman was once lost in sin. Many people judged her, rejected her, looked down on her. But Jesus saw something different in her. While others saw her past, he saw her heart, and everything changed. She left behind her old life and followed Jesus with faith and devotion. She stayed near him, even during his suffering. And when Jesus died on the cross, she did not leave. She wept. She mourned. But she remained faithful. And then, something unbelievable happened. She became one of the first people to witness the resurrection of Jesus. From sinner to faithful follower. And she became known as the patron saint of women, converts, and those seeking forgiveness. And her story reminds us, no one is too far gone for God's mercy. Your past does not define your future. God can still heal the broken parts of your life. Even when people judge you, God still sees your worth. And sometimes, the people with the darkest past become the strongest examples of faith. No matter your past, God can still transform your life. Saint Mary Magdalene, pray for us. This rich young man gave up everything to follow God. Before becoming a saint, Francis lived a life of wealth and pleasure. He loved parties, fine clothes, and the attention of others. But deep inside, he felt empty. Then one day, everything changed. He heard God calling him to rebuild the church and live a life of humility. So he gave up his riches, his comfort, his old life. He chose peace over power. He helped the poor, cared for the sick, and even animals seemed drawn to him. And he became known as the patron saint of animals, nature, and peace. And he once said, "Start by doing what is necessary, then what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible." From wealth came humility. From surrender came peace. Saint Francis of Assisi, pray for us.
This priest had the wounds of Jesus. He was known as Padre Pio, a humble priest devoted to God. But one day, something shocking happened. Wounds appeared on his hands, his feet, and his side, the same wounds of Jesus on the cross. People were afraid. Some said it was fake. Others believed it was a miracle. But the pain was real, and it never stopped. For 50 years, he carried these wounds, yet through the suffering, he never lost his faith. He prayed, he served, he helped others. Many claimed they were healed through his prayers, and he once said, "Pray, hope, and don't worry." From pain came faith, from suffering came miracles, and through it all, he never lost his trust in God. Saint Padre Pio, pray for us.
What if they told you, leave your faith or die? most people would be afraid. But one Filipino man chose God until the very end. His name was Saint Lorenzo Ruiz. Before becoming a saint, Lorenzo Ruiz was just a simple husband and father from Manila. He served in the church as a sacristan and lived a normal life. Until one day, he traveled to Japan with missionaries. But during that time, Christians were being hunted and tortured. Lorenzo was captured. The soldiers gave him one final chance. Reject your faith, and you will live. But even in pain, even in fear, he refused to deny God. And before his death, he said these powerful words, "Had I 1,000 lives, all these to him shall I offer." Because of his courage and faith, he became the first Filipino saint. Today, Saint Lorenzo Ruiz is known as the patron saint of Filipino youth, altar servers, overseas Filipino workers, and people facing persecution for their faith. And his story reminds us, true faith shines brightest during the hardest times. Life may test you, people may doubt you, and sometimes following God is not easy. But like Saint Lorenzo Ruiz, we must stay faithful even when we are afraid. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is trusting God despite it. No matter how difficult life becomes, never lose your faith. Saint Lorenzo Ruiz, pray for us.
What if a teenager chose God over fear? Most young people dream about fame, success, or an easy life, but one Filipino boy chose something greater. His name was Saint Pedro Calungsod. Pedro was just a young catechist from the Philippines. He traveled far from home with missionaries to spread Christianity and teach children about God. Even at a young age, his faith was already strong, but their mission became dangerous. People falsely accused them. They were attacked, and Christians were hated in that place. Pedro was given a chance to escape, but he stayed loyal to his faith and never abandoned the mission. And because of his courage, he suffered and died for God at a very young age. But his story did not end there. Years later, he became the second Filipino saint recognized by the Catholic Church. Today, Saint Pedro Calungsod is known as the patron saint of Filipino youth, students, catechists, and young missionaries. And his story reminds us, you are never too young to stand for your faith. In a world full of pressure and distractions, choosing God is already an act of courage. You may feel small, you may feel unnoticed, but God can still use your life to inspire others. No matter your age, you can become a light to the world. Saint Pedro Calungsod, pray for us.
This humble farmer was poor, but people said angels were helping him work. But no one understood why. Saint Isidore was poor, simple, unknown. Every day, he worked long hours in the fields just to feed his family. But before touching the soil, he always chose to pray first. Some people became angry. They mocked him. They said he was lazy and wasting time in church. But one day, something unbelievable happened. While Saint Isidore was praying, people claimed they saw angels plowing the fields for him. God himself was honoring the faith of a humble farmer. And through his kindness, humility, and devotion, he became known as the patron saint of farmers and rural workers. Today, May 15th, is the feast day of Saint Isidore the farmer. And his story reminds us, God honors those who work with faith and humility. Success is not always about wealth or recognition. Sometimes, the holiest people live the simplest lives, even when no one notices your hard work. God sees every sacrifice you make. And when life feels heavy, never stop praying and trusting God, because faithfulness in small things can lead to extraordinary blessings. Saint Isidore, Pray for it.
This saint once lived a life full of lust and sin. Before becoming holy, Augustine chased worldly pleasures and ignored God for many years. He partied, he sinned, he lived far from faith. His mother, Saint Monica, cried and prayed for him every single day. People thought Augustine would never change, but one moment transformed his life forever. He heard a voice saying, "Take and read." When Augustine opened the Bible, his heart changed completely. The sinner became one of the greatest saints and Christian thinkers in history. Today, St. Augustine is known as the patron saint of theologians, philosophers, and those seeking conversion. His story reminds us that no one is too far gone for God's mercy. St. Augustine, pray for us. He was just a normal teenager. He loved video games, computers, and soccer. But Carlo Acutis used technology for something greater, to spread the message of God. At a young age, he created a website documenting Eucharistic miracles around the world. People called him God's influencer. Even while suffering from leukemia, Carlo offered his pain to God and continued smiling with faith. Before he died, he said, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." Today, Carlo Acutis is known as the patron of youth, students, and the internet in the digital age. And today, we remember and celebrate his birthday, a young soul who inspired millions to live closer to God. Saint Carlo Acutis, pray for us.
Why is this saint always covered in arrows? The answer is darker than you think. Saint Sebastian was once a Roman soldier, strong, respected, trusted by the empire. But secretly, he was helping imprisoned Christians and defending his faith in Jesus. When the emperor discovered the truth, Sebastian was sentenced to death. Roman soldiers tied him to a tree and filled his body with arrows. They thought he was dead, but unbelievably, he survived. A Christian woman secretly rescued him and cared for his wounds. And instead of hiding, Sebastian returned and boldly continued preaching his faith. Because of his courage and sacrifice, he became one of the most honored Christian martyrs in history. And the arrows in his images became a symbol of unwavering faith through suffering. His feast day is celebrated every January 20th, and his story reminds us, faith is strongest when it survives pain, fear, and persecution. Sometimes, the people who suffer the most become the greatest examples of courage. Saint Sebastian, pray for us. And these are just some of the incredible saints whose faith changed history forever. Some suffered greatly. Some were rejected by the world, but all of them chose to trust God until the very end. Their stories remind us that holiness is not about being perfect. It's about faith, courage, humility, and never giving up on God. Which saint inspired you the most? Comment below which saint story should be featured next. And don't forget to subscribe for more saint stories and Christian content.